Hello, everyone. Happy first day of spring and welcome to Get Hired Live. I'm your host, Brandy Fowler, news reporter for LinkedIn, and I'm coming to you live from the LinkedIn office in Atlanta. Before we kick things off, as we always do, hit the comments, take a moment, tell us about your career, where you're from. This is a great opportunity to network with each other. And speaking of networking, that's exactly what we're talking about today: how to use networking to fuel your job search. And we have a great show today. And last week, my colleague Andrew Seaman actually talked about this on his podcast, Get Hired. And we're digging a little bit deeper into that today. So if you have any questions as we talk about the topic, make sure you drop those in the comments so we can get those answered for you. We have a very special guest today. Elise Powers, who was on Andrew's show last week, is here with us. And she's the founder and CEO of Eleview Consulting and a networking guru. Elise, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. And can you tell us just about the first time you saw your networking strategy really pay off in your career?
There have been so many times. The first that comes to mind is I was in a job I didn't really like, and I knew I wanted to go into management consulting. And I had applied online for so many jobs, truly hundreds of jobs, and nothing was working out. And I went to an event, an alumni event for the Indiana University where I went to school. And I ran into a woman who I apparently had emailed 5 years ago. When I was in college, she was several years older than me, and I emailed her asking for her to review my resume when I was a college student because she offered to help current students. And she remembered me and then connected me to a consulting firm where I ended up getting a job and working for several years. So this person who I had one interaction with years prior was the reason that I ended up getting a job out of college. And it's just such a testament to you never know who's going to be the one that helps you get that opportunity that you're really excited about.
Absolutely. And that's something that we're going to talk about too: the importance of community building and how you can tap people to help you with your career. And just to start, also, I think everyone has heard about how networking is essential for your career, but it's also important to have an effective networking strategy. So, how do you kick that off? Is it good to have a targeted list of people you want to network with and then reach out to them from there?
Yeah, so I think intentionality is huge here. And what I'd recommend is thinking about the opportunities you want or that are exciting to you. Maybe it's a specific job title, a company you want to work for, and then find people who have had those experiences or are currently in those roles. So, what you don't want to do is try networking with someone who's a recruiter or an HR. They're not your best person. Sure, they could be helpful, but what's even better is you find someone who's working at the job that you want and reach out to them and say, I'm interested to learn more about the work that you're doing. I'm interested in the company you're working for. I'd love to hear about your experience. So look for people who can speak to the topics or skills or jobs that you are excited about and come at it from a place of curiosity and wanting to learn about them. That is really the secret here, because everyone wants to talk about themselves. And so when you come at it from a place of I want to hear all about you, I want to learn about you, people are typically more receptive.
That's such a great tip. It's so true. And I think a lot of people want to know, like, how do you do this without coming off as creepy? Like, is that is something that I think people get a lot of anxiety about. They want to reach out, but they don't necessarily know how to do that. So, how do you reach out to someone without doing it in an off-putting way, especially in this economic downturn?
You know what? It is not creepy. I think about it as, let's say you're scrolling through Instagram or Facebook
Mhm.
and you like someone's picture, you comment on someone, you might think, oh, this is kind of random. I haven't talked to this person in a couple of years, but should I comment? But then when we post and random people comment or like what we posted, it never feels creepy. It's flattering. We love when people are commenting and liking on our stuff. The same goes for networking. It's a form of flattery. So I wouldn't be concerned about it feeling creepy, because to that person, it's much more of a compliment. And everyone wants to feel thought of, everyone wants to feel known and remembered or admired. So, not creepy at all. And if you do it from a place of wanting their advice rather than, hey, I saw that you work at XYZ company and I want a job there. That's just aggressive. So we also get into this balance of assertiveness versus aggressiveness. And we want to be assertive in reaching out to people, being proactive, but we don't want to be aggressive and saying, can you get me a job right off the bat?
Yes, absolutely. So it's focusing on how you can literally network with someone, but like in a community building way, how you can really create a genuine connection with someone rather than just going in for the kill about how do I get a job. That's so, so important for sure. I want to take a moment to say hello to some people who have joined us. Morella from Geneva Lake, Switzerland. Wow. Caroline from San Francisco, Krista from Cincinnati. Hello, thank you for joining us. And I'm going back to our conversation and our next question. You and Andrew talked about how helpful it can be to research someone before you approach them for an informational interviews. What should people be looking for as they, go to approach somebody?
LinkedIn is your secret weapon here. I would look at their LinkedIn profile, understand where they went to school, what certifications they have, what jobs they've had in the past, read their about summary section. You also want to know who your mutual connections are. So I promise LinkedIn is not paying me to say this, but I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for you to have a strong LinkedIn profile and for you to take the time to look at someone else's. So the reason this research is so important is because it allows you to ask more meaningful, informed questions. So for instance, instead of saying, oh, how long have you worked at LinkedIn? It's, I noticed you've worked at LinkedIn for 12 years. What are some of the big changes you've seen in the organization in terms of the products they're offering to customers? Those are two totally different questions. It is something that drives me crazy when I am having a networking chat with someone and they start off with, so Elise, what do you do? Or, so what's Eleview Consulting? And I'm thinking, did you not spend any time looking me up? Or why are we even talking? This is something you could have found online in 2 minutes. So look at their LinkedIn. It also helps to identify mutual connections, which is why it's really ideal to have over 500 connections, because that increases the likelihood that you have some mutual people in common. People like to help those who they have something or someone in common with. So if you can see, oh, we both know Brandy. I went to college with Brandy. How do you know her? Oh, it looks like you work together at XYZ company. That just builds immediate trust because you have this common foundation.
Yeah. And what you were saying too is important. If you can build those connections, but there are times where you just don't have them. And so if you want to build a connection with a stranger, what is the best way to go about that? Is it, like you said, finding that common ground? So when you approach them, you have something to talk about in an informed way?
Yeah, I mean, ideally you'll find something in common. We both grew up in the Midwest, or I saw that you also went to a Big Ten school, or it looks like you started your career in venture capital or consumer products. Something as broad as that is better than nothing. If you really have absolutely nothing in common, simply approach it from, I'd love to get your advice. I'd love to learn about your career path. I noticed that you went from a psychology major in undergrad to medical school. Help me understand what drew you to both psychology and then going to medical school afterwards. So you want to be specific in why you're reaching out to them and give a purpose for the conversation. So that's how I would approach it if you don't have much in common. And then also, we have to acknowledge that when you're networking, you should be reaching out to a fair amount of people, and not everyone is going to reply. And that's okay. This is a numbers game. So it can feel frustrating and disappointing when someone isn't replying to you, but know that, hey, that's the expectation. You just have to keep putting yourself out there.
Absolutely. And I want to take a moment to hit our questions from the audience. I'm going to start with Mark, who says, I'm a mid-career nonprofit professional introvert. Ooh, who has jumped around and not really maintained contact with most past colleagues. How do you get reconnected without coming across as needy? It's a really important question.
So good. And I also just want to empathize with being an introvert. I actually am the most introverted person I've ever met, and networking can feel exhausting and daunting. My tips, if you are introverted and trying to network, are one, Stick to one-on-one conversations. Going to a big event might not be the right move for you. I find that talking with someone one-on-one is much easier than being in a group setting or walking into a room with 200 people and figuring out, who am I supposed to talk with right now? So I would reach out to people you went to school with, people who are former colleagues, and simply say, I'm reaching out for this reason. Maybe they work in an industry or a company that you're interested in. I'd love to buy you coffee, or I'd love to hop on a quick call. Do you have time for a 30-minute video call in the coming weeks? I'm happy to accommodate your schedule. So stick for those one-on-one conversations. You can keep it short, 30 minutes max. If you want to go big and do coffee or lunch, go for it. But as an introvert, it's a little bit more tiring. So a phone call or video call works great.
Yeah, that's such great advice for introverts and extroverts too. But I just want to know too, which is kind of along the lines of this: how do you keep the conversation going after that first combo, and to keep that to keep that conversation strong and that connection strong?
Yeah, so it's all about the follow-up. I think the biggest mistake people make when networking is they treat it as a one-off transaction. Networking, by definition, is the building of mutually beneficial relationships over time through regular and active communication. So, this requires you to be methodical and intentional. When you talk with someone, take notes on what they're telling you, not just about the work stuff, but also their personal life. So maybe you hear, oh, my daughter's starting kindergarten in the fall. Perfect. In the fall, say September, October timeframe, set a calendar reminder for yourself to follow up with them and say, Joe, I remember you saying your daughter was starting kindergarten. I'm thinking of you in back to school season. How did your daughter do? Is she liking her teacher? That is the easiest way to win someone over. Everyone loves it when they feel like you remember what's important in their lives. And what's most important in most people's lives are their family, their friends, their pets. So keep track of those little details and use it as a way to continue the conversation or get back in touch. I also recommend, in addition to setting calendar reminders for yourself, maybe you use an Excel spreadsheet or use Asana. There's a lot of tools out there to just keep track of who you've met, who you want to stay in touch with, and when you need to get back on their radar. On average, you want to aim for about 3 touch points per year. That's what the research shows is the most effective cadence for maintaining a professional relationship. So you might reach back out about a trip they said they were taking. How did your trip to Denver go? You might send them an article that you found interesting. It doesn't have to be a conversation, a phone call, a lunch to stay in touch. It can be a simple email exchange or a LinkedIn message.
I love that. Such great tips. And I want to go to another question from the audience. How can you use networking to overcome long-term unemployment? That came from Charlie.
Got it. So, Charlie, what I'd recommend is to be honest and be vulnerable and also be confident. So, just because you've been unemployed for maybe longer than you would like, or maybe it was an intentional break in your career, I think most people can understand that position, especially coming out of COVID. We're seeing more people than ever who've taken 3 years off because they had family obligations. So I would be honest about it and lead with enthusiasm and excitement. I've taken X amount of time off from work and I feel energized and ready to jump back in, add value to a team. I also recommend using it as an explanation for how you've gotten clarity on what you want to be doing. So employers, when they're looking at candidates, want someone who's excited and enthusiastic about the work and who knows what they're getting into and is going to stay long term. So if you can say, I've had 2 years to reflect on my skills, my interests, and this is the exact type of job that I'm excited about, I can't wait to learn more. That is how I would approach it.
Love, love, love that. And I have another question from Timothy, who says, during an informational interview, what are some tips to keep the conversation on track? What is the most useful and actionable information that we should try and gather from the conversation? And how can we use this information to advance our job search? So good.
So good, Timothy. Yeah. So You can't go wrong with asking for their advice. So maybe it's, what would you do if you were me in this position? Or what do you wish you would have done at this stage in your career if someone's older and more experienced than you? So asking for advice is great. Understanding what they love and don't love about their current job so that you can convey that you want to get this well-rounded picture and understanding of the job that they're in. I would also just practice your active listening and follow-up questions. So what drives me kind of crazy in a conversation is what I call conversational whiplash. You ask me where I'm from, what job I do, what I like, what advice, da 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 da, and you're like all over the place. That is not going to get you a deep conversation. So listen to what they say and then ask a follow-up question. Okay, it sounds like your least favorite job or least favorite part of the job is you're in meetings 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. Are there any meetings in particular that you dislike? Or why do you think the organization is structured so that there are so many meetings? Oh, okay. It sounds like it's a very collaborative environment. Have you always enjoyed collaborative environments? So you're just digging a little bit deeper and showing I'm paying attention to you. I'm interested in what you're saying, and I want to hear more.
Love that. Love, love, love that. Thank you for those tips. And also, you and Andrew talked about last week about how helpful it can be to use tools to keep track of who you're talking to, who you want to network with, and who you want to further those conversations with. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know you mentioned the Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, sure. So one of my best tips for networking is for each person you speak with, ask them who they would recommend you get in touch with. So when you get introductions from your network, there's just exponential opportunity to meet people. And most jobs are found through not your inner network, but that secondary layer of your network. So someone you used to work with who introduces you to someone that they know. So I would ask those questions. I would then at the end of the conversation, let's say I say, Brandy, is there anyone you can think of who might have a helpful perspective for me? And you say, oh, you have to meet Josie. Josie's great. She, worked at a company that is similar to what you're looking for. I would say, okay, great. If it's helpful, I can ghostwrite an email that would introduce me to Josie and I'll send it to you. All you have to do is copy and paste. Perfect. Then it's much less work for the person who's doing the introduction and makes it more likely the introduction is going to happen. And you get to position yourself in the way that you want to be positioned. So keep templates for email introductions so it's really easy for you. And then again, use Nimble or HubSpot or whatever email tracking tool you're using to know, did they read my email? How many times have they opened it? Because a lot of people do the mark is unread. And then follow up a week or 2 weeks later if you don't hear back.
That's so helpful. And I think something that a lot of people haven't thought about in terms of enhancing your networking strategy. So thank you for that. I want to go back to something you said earlier about sometimes people don't respond to you when you're trying to network with them, which can be kind of frustrating. So can you talk about how do you stay motivated when that happens to you? How can you adjust your approach also if it keeps happening?
It's so challenging. I think, there's research that I'm sure most people have heard that when you are ignored, it triggers the same part of your brain as physical pain. It is awful to be ignored. Think about even someone just not answering your text message. So I want to normalize the feeling of being frustrated, feeling hurt, getting a little bit maybe insecure, and say, you know what, if less than half of people are not responding, you're right on track, okay? Not everyone's going to respond. Maybe even most people won't respond. That's okay. It's a numbers game. Reach out to more people than you think you need to reach out to. If you are, maybe over half of people aren't responding, in that case, maybe it's your outreach. Maybe you're coming across as too aggressive. So let's say you're emailing saying, hey, I want a job at Pepsi. I saw you work there. I'd love to get your thoughts on how I can get a job at Pepsi. That's coming off too strong. Someone might think, whoa, I don't even know you. I'm not going to vouch for you. I can't refer a total stranger. So maybe you need to adjust your outreach to be a little bit softer. Again, I'd love your advice. Not asking for a job, or I just would like to hear about what a career in project management looks like. That's a little bit easier for someone to say, okay, I'm happy to do that. You're not putting any pressure on me. You might also say, I'm going to reach out to my inner network and ask each person I know for 2 introductions. That warm introduction is really helpful. You might also go through your inner network's LinkedIn connections, see who they're connected with, find people that you would love an introduction for, and then send them a note. Hey, I saw you were connected to Joe Schmo on LinkedIn. Would you feel comfortable making an introduction for me? I'd like to hear about their career at this company. So that's going to increase your likelihood of getting a response.
So, so, so good. Thank you for those tips. And I'm going to go back to the questions in the comments for 1 second because Antonio wants to know if you know anywhere to find good networking email and mail templates.
Ooh, I like that. Actually, I have a LinkedIn learning course that has a bunch of templates on it. Send me a LinkedIn message and I'll try and scour the internet for some templates I like, or I'll just send you some of mine, but feel free to send me a message and I'll help where I can.
Awesome. And we're getting so many questions. I want to make sure that I get to as many as possible before the show ends. Jennifer is asking, what you are explaining is exactly how I feel, but my real world work experience is not doing justice on paper. How can we try to get our resumes to stick out when going against other candidates that may check off more boxes? It's a good.
So good. So it's all about those transferable skills.
Mm.
So figure out, what did I do in this job? What were the results I was driving for? And how can I spin that in the language of the job that I'm seeking? So let's say you had a job in, I don't know, social media management, digital marketing of sorts. And now you're interested in project management. So seemingly unrelated, but if we think about what someone does as a social media manager, you are understanding the needs of marketing, brand. You're thinking about, the cost per click. You're looking at the budget with finance. So then you say, okay, I was able to coordinate cross-functional objectives in order to drive business results by 20%. That's how you spin it in the way of a project manager. So I would just try to use the language in the job description of the job that you're excited about and use those keywords, those buzzwords to describe what you've done in the past. It's all about telling a story and finding those similarities, the correlation between what you did in the past and what you're equipped to do in the future. I promise there's overlap if you convey it in the right way.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And Jennifer says, thank you for that. I'm going to go to another question. Persis says, how many cold network DMs should we send daily or weekly since it's a numbers game? That's really, really good.
Oh, gosh. You know what? It's not a hard and fast rule. And it depends on if you're employed currently, because then you have less time for your job search. So if you have a full-time job and you're job searching, aim for 10 a week. If you are not currently employed and you're looking for a job, 10 a day. You have more time. Job searching becomes your full-time job. So I would get to it. And I would make sure that every message you send is just a little bit personalized. Obviously, you want to have the right first name. Don't just copy and paste, send a message to me saying, hi, Sophie. My name's Elise. So it's going to be a major turnoff if I see the wrong name. And then I would try to make the first sentence, at least, something that is personal. I noticed that you've run Eleview Consulting for 5 years now. So I know you've actually looked at my profile. And then this is kind of random and maybe unrelated, but I have to say, one thing that drives me crazy is when I see people say, can you speak tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.? No, excuse me, I have a life. Like, that is just so presumptuous that I would have nothing going on and just be free to talk. So I prefer, let me know what works best for you in the coming weeks, or if you're willing to speak, I'm happy to accommodate your schedule. Just let me know what's most convenient for you.
Love that. So be considerate of people's time. Make sure you're looking at this as a job, basically, to enhance your networking strategy. Is going to take work, but it's worth it. And I'm going to take another question from the audience. Nicole says, how can I create a memorable introduction when networking? I feel like when I try to network, they either deny my request or ends up being a dead end.
Got it. Okay. So a memorable introduction. I like that, Nicole. So You could try with a catchy hook or a story. Um, you know, my elevator pitch of sorts when I'm introducing myself. I lead workshops at companies for a living. So I might introduce myself with, I have been obsessed with interpersonal skills since I was 3 years old, and it was forced upon me by my parents, who were the ultimate helicopter parents. In my LinkedIn message, I might say, don't get me started. It's a long story. Happy to tell you on a networking call. Anyways, this is really about you and what you have done over the course of your 20-year career. I'd love to hear more, blah, blah, blah. So you might start with humor if that's your style. You might, again, if you use the something or someone in common, that's going to be your best way to get a response. And then for being memorable, just come up with something that's unique to you. Maybe it's, I studied abroad in Bangkok and was able to identify or hone in on my passion for blah, blah, blah. Fast forward 5 years and I'm still interested in that, and notice that you do blah, blah, blah. So I think that is the best way to handle it.
Wonderful. And I can't believe we are almost at the end of the show. Is there a take-home point that we didn't hit that you think is key for networking?
Just keep going at it. I really think that so much of it is a mind game where it can just be discouraging. It can be hard. It can feel lonely. It can feel isolating and disappointing. Know that you're not alone. There are so many people who can support you. The LinkedIn platform is it is your number one tool. Build connections with people, find those common points, know that there are going to be people who are excited to have you, to help you, and then companies that are going to be so thrilled to have you on their team. It can take longer than you expect. Go in with that mindset. And I can't wait to see where everyone ends up going with their careers. I have no doubt it'll be so many positive outcomes.
Awesome. And Elise, thank you so much for the incredible tips. The way you break down networking is just phenomenal. So thank you for joining.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you to all of you for joining us. As you know, the first day of spring signifies new beginnings. So I hope you can use the tips that Elise shared to fuel a new and more effective networking strategy. And this week on the Get Hired podcast, Andrew sat down with Selena Rizvani, the author of Quick Confidence, and they talked about how to build your confidence as a job seeker. You can check out the episode wherever you listen to podcasts when it's live on Wednesday, March 22nd. And to answer your questions about the topic, Selena will join me on the next episode of Get Hired Live. That will be on Monday, March 27th at noon Eastern Time. And you can RSVP to the show using the link in the comments. Thank you again for joining. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon.